Hey everybody, Xenoback here for another challenge video. Today we're going to be beating Mega Man 3 with only the Spark Shock. Let's get straight into it and talk a little bit about what this challenge is going to entail. So, Mega Man 3 is a bit of a different beast than Mega Man 2. This is actually the only NES game after 2 that stores your E-Tank count, which I find is pretty interesting. Stipulations are mostly the same as in the Mega Man 2 series, yada yada. We're going to be only using Spark Shock unless we absolutely need to, so exceptions for utilities, Rush Coil or Jet, of course, which we need at certain points and literally cannot do anything about. Any non-Spark Shock weapon usage will be counted as meta and will be noted as we go through the run. And also, as usual, which I need to point out every single time, yes, this ROM is modded, because otherwise this is not possible. There are some bosses that are immune to the Spark Shock. We would run out of Spark Shock ammo, etc., etc. So, yeah, take this all with whatever amount of salt you want. Let's get straight into it. Now, the password that I've just inputted gives us 9 E-Tanks at the start, and, your perspective on this, you can complain about it as well if you want, but we could achieve the same outcome by just going to Gemini Man stage 5 times and grinding them out, so we're going to be making this not any more hellish than it needs to be. That said, let's get straight on with the challenge. So, it's fairly common knowledge in the Mega Man community that Spark Shock is pretty much a worthless piece of crap. This is undoubtedly the worst weapon in the entire classic series, to be completely frank with you. It's basically a worse version of Ice Slasher, which is kind of embarrassing considering that they got this right in Mega Man 1 and then somehow managed to botch it here, but for those that don't already know, the reason why this weapon is so borked is because you can stun enemies, as you can see here. But the thing is, you can't pause the game to actually dispose of them, and this weapon doesn't do damage to any normal enemies. So you're just kind of screwed trying to get around them for the most part. And that was, yeah, it also causes some weird behavior, but I'm taking damage left and right here because I literally cannot defend myself. So this one is gonna probably suck a lot of ass. Magnet Man stage is actually a relatively convenient starting point because it's short and this entire section has no enemies. But Magnet Man is also one of the few bosses that's weak to this thing. Him, Sparkman, one of the Wily Machine phases, but otherwise it's going to be mostly a really tough uphill battle, to be totally frank. There are some bosses that are going to give us a lot of trouble in this challenge. Whoa. See, when I try and talk and platform at the same time, it doesn't usually end that well for me. Either way, this stage has a few annoying obstacles. Just again, we need to damage boost through basically everything because we just cannot damage a single enemy. Thankfully, these missiles and other things don't do too much damage overall, and we don't need that much HP to tackle Magnet Man. He takes 7 damage from this thing, which is pretty generous. And that's Magnet Man down. Alright, next stage. Probably with the less narration. If we're being honest with ourselves, stage selection is mostly pretty arbitrary, especially in this challenge. Once you're past Mega Man 2 in this series, you don't lose your E-Tanks upon game overing, so we really are free to do this in whatever order we want, considering that we're restricted to only one weapon anyways. One interesting thing about Spark Shock is that the only normal enemy in the entire game that it's capable of destroying are these walking bombs found in Shadow Man stage. I always found that kind of bizarre and interesting, both of those. Either way, this stage really sucks. Again, because Spark Shock can't damage a single thing, we're just forced to do stuff like this, where we have to reset for. Have to tank damage and then just take the lives. Thankfully, you can kind of get around these Kamagoros sometimes, if you don't completely botch it like I do. There's no such luck with these Parasues, I believe they're called. Yeah, see, even if you paralyze them, they're still in your way. So this section is just, well, that's, you're not supposed to do that, but anyways. Yeah, the only real way to get through this section is to bait them from the preceding platform and then just wait an eternity, which is amazing, as you can imagine. Anyways, after approximately 6 years of waiting and stalling, we get to Shadow Man. So this is definitely going to be a pain in the ass. You know, using Spark Shock against him isn't really much different than using the Buster, because these things have the same travel arc. Shadow Man is Shadow Man though, and this guy is a massive pain in the ass. He always is. Totally random pattern, so, you know, it's not really much to rely on. You honestly just want to stay as far away from him and see if you can even come close to reacting in time. Or just try and damage race, which is usually what I go with. As long as you're constantly putting pressure on him and you have like close to full health, you should be able to make it most of the time. But this is still aggravating, as you can imagine. Next stage. So, a couple of interesting reflections on this part in Snake Man stage. So the big snakies are immune to Spark Shock, so you might think, okay, we're kind of boned here. And interestingly enough, Rush Coil goes straight through this moving platform, which it makes sense because it's a sprite. And I've explained this before, but in old video games, when things are not counted as like solid collision and rather they're sprite-based, they typically don't interact with other sprites that cordially. But thankfully, using a Rush Jet, we can actually skip that, and we don't have to, you know, really bother. We can use pacifist mode strats to get past that snake. This might be the first time ever that I actually find myself needing these two massive health pickups in this stage. I've always wondered why they put two of them there back to back. It's like just a free heal for everything. I find it funny that you can freeze these pogo sticks as well, but this part of the stage isn't super remarkable. Kind of useful actually, Spark Shock in this specific scenario, but anyways. Spark Shock is capable of taking these guys out of their cloud form, but stunning the bullets isn't going to do you that much good. Either way, you can kind of just jump around them. As for Snake Man, so this guy, honestly not too bad. This fight was not modded. He usually takes 1 damage from Spark Shock, and it plays out pretty much the same as the Buster, to be honest, and it's not that difficult. Kind of just need to go back and forth here. It's literally the same as like the Buster strat, as you can imagine. I think the projectile for Spark Shock is a bit wider than the Buster, so sometimes it might provide better coverage, but really does not change a whole lot about the fight. One thing I was wondering, as I was doing the hacking for this video, is wondering if Snake Man snakes have their own damage value in memory. As you just saw, the Spark Shock dinged off of them, and Needle Cannon is capable of killing them, so I'm inclined to believe there is a value stored in memory for them, which is kind of interesting to me. Either way, that's Snake Man down, and I'm not going to bother cutting because I ended up yapping for too long. Let's just keep on going. Right, so slight tragedy here. Unfortunately, Tama, unlike Big Snakey, does have a wall that prevents you from moving past it. It's also immune to Spark Shock, so we're kind of taking an L on that, but there's not really anything I can do about it, unfortunately. We are also going to be forced to sacrifice a life here, I believe, because Pickleman Bulls are immune to Spark Shock, so you'll enter this section with like next to no health, which is pretty amazing, as you can imagine. But anyways, one sacrifice and we're ready to keep moving. Thankfully, Spark Shock doesn't impede our platforming abilities in any way, so the rest of the stage plays out pretty much like you'd expect. Anyways, Top Man. This is just a more tedious version of what the fight is like when you use the Buster. He only takes 1 damage from Spark Shock, so it's just kind of the same process as usual, except even longer. You can make funny sounds like that, though, which is great, I guess. Oh, sometimes it doesn't play at all. That was kind of funny, actually. But yeah. Yeah, I like how sometimes it just doesn't play at all. It's kind of funny. It still mutes one of the music channels, but there's no sound effect. That's kind of funny. Okay, well, not sure why that happens, but anyways. Spark Shock can destroy these junk blocks, so you're going to want to move through this section very quickly. But yeah, you know, that's probably what you should be doing normally anyways. So let's see if we can make it through this section, because I'm pretty sure that if you're, well, right, so obviously that's not what I meant to do either. Yeah, this is what I meant to do. Yeah, that's how it works. Yeah, that's how it goes. There we go. Alright, Spark Man. He's weak to Spark Shock, but we're probably gonna die. Oh, okay. Nice. Got lucky. Looks like I made a slight mistake in ROM editing, but anyways, we're back. Either way, strategy for this beginning part of the stage is the same as a Buster only run, or really just, you know, this is what you should be doing normally. It's just despawning the bees. That'll let you get through here real easily. So this room with the monkeys actually might be one of the rare opportunities where Spark Shock kind of does get to shine, because you can do that and get through here a lot easier than you would be able to normally. Requires a bit of timing, of course. Not sure if it's going to work in this third room. Okay, yeah, actually. That works a lot better than you might expect. Of course, Pickleman Bulls, as usual, are the bane of our existence here in this challenge. These guys do really a ton of damage, and you just can't hit them at all with Spark Shock, so it's a massive pain in the ass. I find it pretty odd that Mets are immune to Spark Shock. It seems like one of those like small low-grade enemies that you would really be able to paralyze, but I guess not. I also failed the scroll off. That's alright though. I haven't shown the Proto Man encounters really, but he's normally immune to Spark Shock in normal gameplay, and we have to get past these rooms, so I've just modded it so that he takes 1 damage. That's literally the same as the Buster pretty much. You could, you know, ask me why I don't do the same thing for like the Tama, the mini boss and stuff, and for those cases it's kind of interesting to see sometimes if there's a clever workaround, like with the giant snakey. But you know, your definition of technical loss in these challenges can vary a little bit, you know, depends what your personal standards are for legit versus not legit, and on some levels these challenges are purely a thought experiment anyway, since the default answer is always no, but it's just entertainment, you know, it's just for fun. Anyways, Hard Man. I'm sure you can tell by what's happening on screen, but damage racing. What the hell? Okay, well, I'm stupid, but if you're not, just screw up. Ugh, just cut. Alright, Needle Man stage. So the Harry Harrys at the beginning are actually vulnerable to Spark Shock, but the thing is you're going to take contact damage, so it's probably better to just tank the needles. And the same goes for these cannons, is that taking the shots is definitely better than taking contact damage. Same for the Mets, but you can avoid the Yambos, thankfully. Again, the Mets being immune to this thing is very odd to me, but, you know, I don't think any rational actors played a part in making Spark Shock to begin with anyways, so kind of a moot point. Needleman stage is more devoid of enemies than most of the other stages, and it's also pretty short, so not gonna suffer too much with this one. Yeah, I don't know if we can like legally grab that E-tank, but we can mosey right on along. The reason why I've chosen to do the stages with the E-tanks last is for kind of this exact reason, is that in Gemini Man stage you can get an easy 2 of them. So it's best to take his stage on close to the end of the stage order, just in case you need a little fill up. Not that we couldn't grind on some of the other stages, but, you know. Okay, I knew I was going to take damage from that anyways, which is nice. Anyways, Needle Man. He's normally immune to Spark Shock, so we're stuck doing 1 damage. If you know Needleman's pattern well enough, it's not too bad. I still do struggle with it at times, but he can sometimes lock himself in a bit of a pattern. I'm not sure if there's any actual evidence to back this up, but it seems like if you stand sort of in his range, he's more likely to use his headbutt attack. Oh, interesting. Wait. Okay. I had a suspicion that there was a value in memory for Needle Man, for Needle Man's hammer when I was doing research for this video, and it looks like that's correct because it seems like when he's in the hammer state that Spark Shock dings off of him. But I changed the value for his body, so I guess I was correct. That's actually really interesting. I don't know why they would be assigned different values though, because they're never different. The same thing is actually true of Gemini Man, which I was planning on discussing then, but his clone and the real version have separate damage tables, which is bizarre because they're never actually programmed to be any different. The damage to the clone and the damage to the original is always programmed to be the same for every weapon in the original game. So I'm not sure why they even bothered doing that, to be totally honest. Either way, Gemini Man stage. This beginning section is going to be mostly a mess of just trying to dodge stuff and take as little damage as possible. The Bomber Pepes are immune to Spark Shock, as you can see. So most of this is just damage tanking, just a lot of really repetitive damage tanking and trying to jump over these guys and failing, of course. Yeah, this is honestly kind of brutal. It's just really difficult when you cannot do damage to a single thing to get around these things. You can't jump around the fire. You know, I've played this game like a million times, so I have ideas. I have concepts of how to do this. It doesn't always work in my favor, but usually I'm able to get it together. Are we at the end of this section yet? Never mind. Once that hellscape is over, we get the Proto Man cutscene as usual. I believe there's health on the following screen, so that should help us out a little bit. But this opening section is just really brutal, as you can tell. Yeah, there is health. Alright, I wanted to see if I could score that life, but no such luck. So, these eggs, they are not able to be damaged by any weapon except the Buster and Needle Cannon, which is kind of interesting. I mean, it sort of makes sense. I'm not sure why Shadow Blade is excluded from that list, because it is sharp. I guess it doesn't count. I guess it's not sharp enough. So either way, this section would play out the same whether you have Spark Shock or the Buster active, because it's really just another straightforward projectile. Just literally trying to get past here. Yeah, there we go. That's how it's done. Either way, back to Spark Shock. So unlike the Tamas in Top Man stage, these Penguin mini bosses are completely bypassable, which is nice. The best thing to do here is just tank damage from one of the penguins and keep moving. And then we'll get to this segment, which is a big pain in the ass, as you can imagine. Also, this video is probably going to end up being a lot longer than the Mega Man 2 videos now that I look at it. Possibly just because I have more to explain, but I don't necessarily need to show this entire difficult segment. It is challenging, but it's not challenging in a way that's like really specific to Spark Shock, so let's just move on. Alright, so we got 9 E-Tanks, but we have very little health with which to tackle Gemini Man. This can still work out though. Again, as with most of the bosses, the strategy does not vary from the Buster only strat whatsoever. Gemini Man's the same as ever. Just try and skirt him, basically. I think the more you keep him jumping, yeah, he's not actually able to fire the Gemini laser unless you give him the opportunity to. I imagine that the timer only ticks down when he's on the ground, but I'm not sure about that. That's all of the main stages beat. Now, of course, this is Mega Man 3, so we still got a big fat chapter of Doc Robots to get through, and that's probably going to make this video longer than the Mega Man 2 ones, just literally by virtue of that, because there's just more game. It's just longer. Alright, Doc Robot stages. Let's get into them. Just for fun, there's a little trick you can do by touching a spike at the exact same time as a screen transition. Not like that. Nope. I think it has to be on the same frame. see if I can get it to work. No. There we go. So, the music is off. I have, quote, died, but I'm still alive, as you can clearly tell. Well, okay, yeah. So, yeah, this is a bizarre state. It actually reduces the lag in the game, which I think is kind of funny. This is often done as a speedrun strat. See, notice how the game is running like a little smoother than usual, just because there's no more music playing. I always found that to be pretty entertaining. Either way, Doc Shadow stage doesn't really play out that differently to the original. There's a lot of platforming involved and like jumping around these pedal keys, of course, but besides that, it's very similar to the base version of Shadow Man stage, so not going to harp on this one for too long. So the Doc Robot bosses are where we start running into some serious problems with this game. Exhibit A, Doc Wood. This guy is a massive pain in the ass. Might be genuinely the worst of them. This shield is almost undodgeable. It does a shit ton of damage. Yeah, we're gonna start burning through E-tanks like crazy at this point. So yeah, a nigh undodgeable shield does a shit ton of damage. Almost impossible to avoid in any capacity. Better to take damage from the leaves, but the thing is, you're probably not going to be able to jump over the shield, so, you know, you're just kind of screwed. Yep, this is what we need all those E-tanks for, is this bullshit. God, the shield does so much damage, it's ridiculous. It's difficult to jump over at regular range, let alone point blank. See, that was like lucky. I barely made it over, even like that. And if you die to this guy, you're going all the way back to the beginning of the stage, so have fun. I don't know if you can shoot through his shield. Okay. Got lucky and kind of was able to get through. We're probably going to skip ahead again, because there's not that much to say about the rest of the stage. You know, what little there is, because the first part of it is significantly longer than the second. It's just this, like, hallway, basically. Right, so after another round of egregious and undodgeable obstacles in that hallway, we get to Doc Heat, who's less painful, a little less painful than Doc Wood, for example. They really got the order on most of these Doc Robot rematches, like, totally wrong, is that they almost always put the worst one to deal with at the end of the stage. Awesome. Alright. This might be one of those cases where we need to E-tank it up, just because pretty difficult to withstand this guy. It seems like, unlike the original Heat Man, Doc Heat always gets a volley of flames out, if I'm seeing this correctly. Sometimes the fire button just doesn't respond for some reason. Yeah, he's also harder to jump over, and also that graphic, I think, was backwards. What's the deal with that? Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure anybody that watches this or has played the game knows that this fight fucking sucks. Unlike the original Heat Man, it's really difficult to dodge that flame blast attack at the beginning, and that just makes the rest of the fight a complete disaster. Either way, yeah. Doc Spark. I was trying to remember where the bosses that are weak to Spark Shock are located. It's probably better that we do this stage first, considering there's an E-tank in Doc Needle that we can make use of. Although once we're past the Doc Robot stages, we really won't be needing E-tanks for all that much. Either way, like before here, we need our little hard knuckle strat. No. Nope. No. It's very precise. There we go. Alright. And back to our regular Spark Shock programming. These Elikins obviously are immune to Spark Shock, which I think I showed this off in the original Sparkman stage. These wheels are kind of glitchy, as you can tell. And of course we end up eating a lot of damage here because of things out of our control. Anyways. Alright, so after taking a bunch more damage, including the missiles from those missile shooting guys, we have Doc Metal. So Doc Metal is semi-weak to Spark Shock, which is going to help us out in this case. It doesn't mean the fight is all that much better. I forget, how fast does he shoot the blades? Yeah, the timing is different. Yeah. His blade throwing timings are different compared to the original Metal Man. Especially if you try and do the back and forth strat, it just doesn't really play out the same because I feel like Doc Metal moves a lot more erratically. Although I could be wrong. And he also doesn't, yeah, sometimes he just waits, which is odd. Not sure why that happens. You know, this is just me whining about the Doc Robot fights volume like 500 at this point, but these fights suck so bad. Okay, so yeah, you really have to be like, that doesn't even work. Yeah, that doesn't even work all the time, consistently at least. That's really stupid. Yeah, that's stupid. Come on. Jump. Yeah, he just doesn't do it sometimes. Okay. Jump. Jump. Okay, so you can't... If you shoot at him, that's what causes the issue. There we go. Oh, sometimes not. Okay. Yeah, real awesome consistency there, buddy. Okay. Yeah, that's how it's done. That's how you do it. Slide back and forth. Fire off spark shocks. Nope. Not what I was trying to do. Well, I was going to see if I could do the music thing again, but there's not really any point. In this hallway, for those that haven't seen it before, what you're going to want to do is despawn all of these barriers. Like that. It's pretty fun. I showed this trick in my original Mega Man 3 series, I think. I hope. It's been a long time since I did that, so maybe not. But if you didn't know, you can despawn these things pretty easily. That makes this section a lot easier. Oops. As before with these junk blocks, they're immune to spark shock, so just move past here as quickly as possible. I don't recommend sliding on those junk blocks because it causes some glitchiness. And here we have Doc Quick, who's going to give us another heaping helping of annoyance. We're dealing with 1 damage against a boss that moves so erratically that he's borderline undodgeable, which is a great combo. I also like how I wasn't able to pause there. That's pretty fun. I like when that happens. He does a lot of contact damage. Getting hit by the boomerangs is a better idea, if you can do that. He's just too erratic. Like, that's literally... What's the deal with this guy? He's too erratic. We're getting lucky right now, but that's probably going to change at some point soon. Let's E-tank up. No. But yeah. Kind of similar to Quick Man and Mega Man 2, just back and forth. You benefit a lot from having the slide here, of course. But, you know. Still annoying. Anyways. That's another Doc Robot stage down. The opening segment of Robot Gemini doesn't really give us a whole lot to talk about. I find that the opening section with the Nitrons is actually easier because instead of having the Bomber Pepes, you're just having to deal with the Nitrons, or the Gemacies. Now, Doc Flash here is the last of the extremely annoying Doc robots. Doc Bubble isn't going to give us much trouble, and neither will Doc Crash or Doc Air for that matter, but this guy's annoying as hell. He relentlessly pursues you, and is normally the only Doc robot that's immune to Spark Shock, so we're stuck doing 1 damage against this merciless guy with a massive fucking hitbox that is almost impossible to properly avoid. Okay, I probably was a few frames away from dying. Oh, okay, that was kind of cool actually. Great opportunity to get yourself soft locked, by the way, in this pit. I still have no idea why they added this bullshit. Let's sacrifice a life here. Obligatory jet or marine usage section. Doesn't really give us a whole lot to talk about, though. I always found this specific tile, this gray ceiling, this is the only place it's used in the entire game. I always found that very odd, considering that it's a unique graphic that seems to serve no other purpose. This section is not a whole lot to worry about, to be honest. Just let the gym aces kind of waddle around aimlessly. It's also really close to the boss, so not going to provide that much difficulty. Dock Bubble is weak to Spark Shock, so we're going to have a lot less difficulty here than usual. Also, shout out to that glitchy water entrance effect. But, yeah. Dock Bubble isn't particularly difficult even without the weakness, since Bubble Man is one of the easier Robot Masters in Mega Man 2, and surprisingly does not get screwed up by Mega Man 3's implementation of him. But either way, it's on to Dock Needle, the last of these terribly drawn-out stages, and the last of the awful bosses, thankfully, as well. Obligatory Rush Jet usage, but we do get an E-Tank out of it, which is kind of nice. And of course, having to take more damage from these guys, always a pain. Dock Air is weak to Spark Shock, so we get a little bone thrown at us here. He's a bit annoying to hit with it, of course, but weakness is weakness. And okay, let's not die here. We're not gonna need these E-Tanks after this stage anyways, so might as well get use out of them. Please die. Thank you. Alright, mandatory rush jet section again. This part isn't gonna be super interesting, so let's speed it up. Yeah, we can actually do a speed up here instead of an outright skip, I think. Just keep jumping. You know, the usual stuff. Also, Mega Man's hitbox wraps around the bottom of the screen, which some of you may have known, some of you don't. I always found it weird how this Dock Robot stage had more effort put into it than the rest, by the way. It has its own unique mid-bosses. Oh, these guys are immune to, yeah, they're immune to Spark Shock. Yep, I forgot about that. Well, nothing the Buster can't take care of, unfortunately. But yeah, I always found it weird that Dock Needle has these Mets, these unique Mets, and a bunch of other assets that are exclusive to it. Also, these Mets are immune to Spark Shock as well, which is, that's just dandy, you know? It's really great. Everything here just serves to cause you pain. This guy's busterable. Coming up on the end of the stage here. Not sure why they put the health so much later compared to the previous dock stages, but it's perfectly fine. Also, this video is really gonna be long as hell. But you guys are gonna have to get used to it, because this is just how long Mega Man 3 is by default. Anyways, Dock Crash throws his bomb differently than original Crash Man, meaning that this fight is actually a lot more painful. Just because of the offset. Like, see how far away the bomb is compared to where Dock Crash actually is. It's quite bizarre. I also find it weird that none of the attacks have no sound effect, and also that the bomb only explodes once. Oh, nice. Got clipped by the explosion. Yeah, I never studied manipulating this guy as much as I did with the original Crash Man. Just because, like all the other Dock Robots, he seems so much more erratic and like just badly programmed, which is really funny to me. I guess you could have a little headcanon that maybe the data has been corrupted or something, which would kind of explain some of the janky-ass behavior. But either way, that's Dock Crash down. We have this almost meaningless fight with Breakman here. So interestingly enough, Brakeman is programmed to be immune to everything except the Buster in the base game. So that's been modified, of course, because otherwise we're not going to get past this fight. But Spark Shock is the same as the Buster anyways, so it's not a big deal. And Wily ran off with Gamma. Big surprise, right? Super big surprise. Okay, Wily won. This is definitely where the commentary is going to kind of fall apart. Usually this is the part where things get significantly less interesting in all Mega Man 3 runs, just because it's like free E-Tanks and items fortress. And that's not any different here, really. I'm definitely going to start skipping past some bits. I only explain a bit more for the first weapon of every series, I feel like, just because like there's sometimes more to discuss. I find it weird that these penguins are immune to Spark Shock, by the way. You know, another middle finger for this weapon, this terrible, god-awful weapon that just doesn't need it to get any more flack than it already has, but that's fine. I'm gonna be skipping all that. We're also gonna start running into issues on this screen, of course. Hit me with that. Yeah, so we have just enough health, but, you know, this guy is obviously not gonna be taken down by Spark Shock. And we also need to get up here in the first place, so we'll tolerate a little bit of rush jet usage. Let's skip like maybe 20 seconds ahead to save some time. Right, so Kamagoro Maker. The Kamagoro turtles are normally stunned by Spark Shock, interesting enough, but they don't take damage from it, so that's been modified. I actually had to dig pretty hard in the code to figure out where the value for the turtle damage was stored. I made a lot of interesting discoveries, honestly, trying to study stuff up for this video. Alright, that's Wily 1 down. Let's skip way forward in Wily 2, aka the Big Nothing Burger stage. Alright, Yellow Devil Mark 2. This doesn't play out that interestingly. He has no iframes, so we're going to do something that takes advantage of that, that's for sure. Well, you know, if I don't completely fail miserably, of course. I find it interesting that upon the first entrance to the room, Yellow Devil Mark 2 does the normal block shifting, but then from that point in the fight, he only does the shifting pattern when he goes to the left. And the pattern that goes to the right has a totally different pattern of behavior, which is this. Also, the hitboxes really suck for it, which you could probably tell. Please die. Thank you. Alright, Wily 3. There is borderline nothing unique to say about this stage that only applies to Spark Shock and nothing else. I always found it weird that those moving platforms are used for 2 singular rooms and then never again. Alright, Holograph Mega Man. The real one always spawns at the top at the beginning of the fight, so just get up here and spam to your heart's content. That's the quickest way to eliminate it. Not sure if this... I think it's also one of the bosses that had to be modified to take damage from Spark Shock. Alright, so we're at Wily 4, and you might think that this stage doesn't offer anything interesting to talk about, but that's actually false. If you're able to freeze these junk golems in the air, there's something interesting that happens. Of course, since I want to show it, it's not working, but actually it might only be doable with the one on this screen, maybe. Yeah, I think this is the only one that you can really get this get that off on. The rest of them just spawn too close in proximity to you, or just block your way entirely, which is great. This is the refight stage, so you know exactly what to expect from here. The refights don't play out any differently than the original fights, so I think this is another big skip. Yeah, let's just... Alright, let's talk Wily Machine 3. So this would take forever, so let's speed it up. The first phase is actually weak to Spark Shock, so we get a little bit of advantage here. Now, the second phase is very annoying because these turrets will constantly fire in your direction giving you very little opportunity to hit Wily. This can be, you know, circumvented with some good timing, but it is very annoying, of course. That much is undeniable. I think this is the last, like, genuinely very annoying fight in the game, thankfully. So, after this point, won't be having too many struggles. Yeah, but for now, it's just really, really annoying. Yeah, this is really annoying. I can't pause. These turrets just are constantly firing at you. Finally managed to get more than like a couple hits off. Yeah, you really can only do 2 damage per like volley. Yeah, kind of like that. It's very challenging because you're constantly being shot at. And miss again. I've never really learned the rhythm of this fight, to be totally transparent. Usually I conclude it very prematurely with hard knuckle or the jet items, rush items, coil or jet. Jet especially, you can just kind of fly up and hit him. Yeah, this is annoying. This is really, really goddamn annoying. And it's taking forever. These turrets are also royally pissing me off, which is exactly what you want. Oh, I think I lost my iframes. Please die. Thank you. Alright, Wily died. Yeah. End of the game, right? Nope. Alright. Gamma. It's time for Gamma. Alright, let's wrap this up. I've always found it interesting that this little block here is a sprite. Anyways, Gamma doesn't really give a whole lot to talk about. Both phases are normally immune to spark shock, so this has been edited, of course. The first phase just behaves like a new shotman, so not really that much to comment on here. You can just kind of mercilessly gun it down. Now the second phase is much the same. Again, normally it's immune to all these straight firing weapons, but there you go. So, the answer to our question is, in some weird, hacky, fucked up sense, yes, it is possible to beat this game only using the spark shock. You know, if you make provisions for it, of course. There's a few hang-ups, like, you know, Tama and the bosses. The dog robots are really the biggest pain in the ass, exactly as you would expect. There's not really any surprises here. This weapon is complete dog shit. I'm really looking forward to using the other weapons in this game and the other games, because it really doesn't get any worse than this. A weapon that does no damage and has no utility at all. So yeah, if you enjoyed watching me suffer for around 40 minutes on camera, and probably double that time off, then stick around for more of these challenges. I'll keep going through the list of things people have requested. Again, I might jump around games. I might do more Mega Man 3 maybe, because I had to study how to hack this game in the first place to make this video, so we'll see. But thank you all for watching. This is Zeno, signing off. Bye-bye.